This is the Late Round Podcast with your host, JJ Zacharisa.
What's up, everyone? It's JJ Zacharisa, and in this episode 1009 of the Late Round Fantasy Football Podcast, sponsored by DraftKings. Thanks for tuning in. Football season is right around the corner, and there's no better way to lock in your fantasy dominance early than with Best Ball on DraftKings, where you draft once and ride your roster all season long. And right now, DraftKings is giving all customers a can't-miss offer. Draft one, get one. Enter a lineup in the $15 million Best Ball contest for just $20, and you'll score another Best Ball ticket to play free for a share of that $15 million, giving you a second shot to win big. It's easy. Just draft your dream team once, no weekly management required, and let your top scorers automatically start each week. Across the whole season, every breakout star, every clutch play, every touchdown will count toward your quest for a share of $15 million. As you know, I'm drafting over there. I'm documenting things with Becoming a Best Ball Bro, so you can use the information from that show to help you out as well. So download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app now to draft your $20 Best Ball lineup to play for a share of $15 million and get a second ticket to play free for a share of that $15 million. That's two chances to win big without ever setting your lineup again. Draft one, get one, only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. 18 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. Eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. One per customer. Enter the Best Ball $15 million headliner contest by 9/4/25 to get one bonus entry. $20 entry required. Reward expires in 30 days. See terms at DraftKings.com/NFL-best-ball. Sponsored by DK. We've gone over a lot of stuff since last season ended. There was all the prospecting work during draft season. There were some strategy episodes of the show. There was the infamous Rome Odunze versus Emeka Egbuka conversation back in May. We've done players to target, players to avoid, and that's just on the podcast. Outside of this show, you've had the late round prospect guide and the late round draft guide. You've had live streams, the Patreon. There's been so much content and so much research. It's about time for this season to start. But before that happens, I've got to fire off some bold takes. Now, a lot of the bold predictions content in the fantasy football space, it's just vibes based. And some of this is vibes based too, don't get me wrong. But I still want to stay true to myself as an analyst and just be logical. And I want to bring that to the bold prediction analysis. I always think of this as a range of outcomes exercise. I'm not looking at median outcomes here. I'm looking at the high end and the low end, and I'm explaining, hopefully thoughtfully, how those outcomes could come to be. And I hope this is more than just entertainment for you. I genuinely hope that you can walk away from today's show thinking about things a little bit differently after hearing the why. But today, I'll be talking about 10 bold predictions for the fantasy season. And there are actually 5 more of them that I'm going to email out in the late round newsletter. Those won't go out until Thursday, so if you're not subscribed, again, it's absolutely free. I'm giving you 2 days to subscribe. Just head to lateround.com, click newsletter, and submit your email address. It's that simple. And you may want to do that anyway because in-season content starts next week. And I'll be sending my 15 transactions newsletter every Tuesday morning. So again, more bold predictions will come your way on Thursday. Just subscribe for free to that newsletter over on lateround.com. That's enough with the intro though. Let's get to these predictions. The first bold prediction is that Drake London will finish as a top 3 wide receiver in fantasy football this year. Now this is bold because obviously there's a lot of good wide receiver competition out there. And Drake London right now is a fringe top 10 wideout by ADP. But I think this could happen. He's been really good in the NFL to start his career. He's seen a 2.0 yards per route run rate in 2 of his first 3 seasons. We usually only see that from elite wide receivers. Over his 3 years, he's had target shares of 29%, 23%, and 29%. Basically, his peripherals have been awesome. And now you get Michael Penix under center for Atlanta. He's not afraid to take chances down the field. In fact, last year he had an average depth of target of 10.6. Among all Atlanta Falcons quarterbacks since 2011 who had 100 or more dropbacks, that ADOT by Michael Penix, that was the highest. And in his 3 starts last year, yes, limited sample size, London had almost a 39% target share per game rate. So what if all of this just continues? What if Penix continues to push it down the field and Drake London keeps seeing a really high target share? And remember, Darnell Mooney's banged up right now. So I could definitely see a monster season from Drake London. The second bold prediction, Trevor Lawrence will outscore Baker Mayfield. This is bold. If you look at Football Guy's average draft position data, which is an aggregate, Mayfield's being drafted as a QB 7, Trevor Lawrence is the QB 20. But here's why this could happen. Now, obviously, this seems like a Liam Cohen-based prediction, and it kind of is, but it's kind of not. As I've been saying this offseason, Baker Mayfield, he's bound to regress. He had a 7.2% touchdown rate last year, which was by far the highest of his career. And quarterbacks who have been close to that mark historically, they haven't done well the following season, or at least nearly as well. There have been 15 quarterbacks since 2011 who had a touchdown rate between 6.7% and 7.7%. So those are numbers that are plus or minus 0.5% from Baker Mayfield's touchdown rate last year. Of those 15 quarterbacks, their average points per game in that season, in that end season where they had a high touchdown rate, it was 21.4. That's in standard scoring. The following year, their average points per game was 17.2. Every single quarterback saw a drop in points per game. And losing Liam Cohen as his offensive coordinator, that's not going to help things. And the injuries across that offense, that's not going to help either. But Baker Mayfield's loss of Cohen is Trevor Lawrence's gain. Last season, Lawrence was solidly in the top 20 in fantasy points per dropback. That's one of the most predictive metrics that you're going to find at quarterback. And Lawrence has some rushing upside too. He scored between 2.7 and 3.7 points per game via rushing every single year of his career. Mayfield, meanwhile, who was a really good rusher last year, he's only been well above that 2.0 mark just once, just last year. Now, a lot of quarterbacks could have been thrown into Trevor Lawrence's spot in this prediction, whether it's Jordan Love, Justin Herbert, whoever. I just went with Trevor Lawrence because I think he's a great value very, very late in drafts. Travion Henderson will finish as a top 10 running back. Now, this is obviously more PPR focused, but this is bold because according to ADP, he's being drafted right now around RB 18. But this could happen. Travion Henderson had a very, very good ZAP score. It was 94.1 because of his pass catching profile. As a freshman at Ohio State, he caught 27 balls for 312 yards and 4 touchdowns. That might not sound very special, but it is when you look at that context. He did that on a team as a freshman while playing with Jackson Smith-Njigba, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Emeka Egbuka. Henderson's immediately going to be a receiving threat out of the backfield for New England. He has 15% target share upside. Ramondre Stevenson last season, he struggled in yards per route run, and we know that's predictive for future season target share. So that should make us feel even more confident in Travion Henderson's pass catching ceiling. Now, the problem for Henderson is what he's going to do on the ground, right? Ramondre Stevenson's there. He's probably going to see a lot of the early down work, especially early on in the season. But this is about bold predictions. What if Henderson just sees a little bit more rushing work than we're expecting? I'm not talking like a huge backfield rush share, but what if he finishes the year with like a 55% running back rush share per game? That would have ranked 27th last season. That's not far-fetched. Well, since 2011, there have been just 5 instances where a running back had between a 50% and 60% running back rush share and a 13% and 16% target share. I think it's very possible that Travion Henderson finishes within that range. Those 5 running backs, they finished 18th, 13th, 12th, 8th, and 6th in PPR points per game. So top 10 is definitely feasible for Travion Henderson. Calvin Ridley will outscore Garrett Wilson. This one's bold because according to Football Guy's aggregate ADP, Ridley's falling off draft boards around wide receiver 30, Garrett Wilson, wide receiver 15. Now look, I've talked about this in the past, but rookie quarterbacks are not typically good news for their pass catchers, at least in fantasy football. Since 2011, we've seen 41 first-year quarterbacks throw it 300 or more times. Only 16 wideouts from those rookie quarterbacks' teams, they ended up finishing as a top 24 option in PPR points per game. Only 4 of them were top 12 players. Now, the interesting part of that rookie quarterback statistic is that of the wideouts who buck that trend, who finished as a top 24 option, Their average target share, the average target share among those 16 wide receivers was almost 26%. Which means if a wide receiver typically does well with a rookie quarterback, he's doing well because he sees a high target share. Which makes sense because rookie quarterbacks, their teams usually don't throw as much, and their teams usually don't score as much either. And when you look at Calvin Ridley and you look at his situation, don't you see someone who has that 25, 26, even 27% target share upside? And yeah, before you come at me, I know that DJ Moore finished as a wide receiver 1 with Justin Fields in the past. But that year, he had a higher yards per target, yards per route run, targets per route run, touchdown share. The list goes on and on. They were higher than Garrett Wilson has ever seen, that he's ever had in his career. I don't think people fully realize that DJ Moore that season, he was on another planet from an efficiency perspective. Wilson has yet to beat his year 1 yards per route run rate of 1.85. And despite having over 100 catches last year, he was the wide receiver 19 in PPR points per game. What are we really expecting out of a run-heavy offense with Justin Fields as quarterback? So to me, if Cam Ward is just pretty good, he doesn't even have to be elite. He doesn't have to be Jaden Daniels from last year. If he's just pretty good, I think Calvin Ridley can easily outscore Garrett Wilson. The 5th bold prediction is that Drake Maye will end up as this year's best late-round quarterback target. This one's bold because there are so many late-round quarterbacks to choose from this year, and I like a lot of them, but I like Drake Maye the most. I did an episode earlier this offseason on second-year quarterbacks, on sophomore quarterbacks, and they look really good this year. I love Drake Maye. I like Bo Nix. I love Caleb Williams. They're all in a really good spot. JJ McCarthy, too. Maybe even Michael Penix. They're some of the best bets that you can make in that QB7 to QB18 range by ADP. Now, I'm not talking about those specific quarterbacks. I'm just talking about second-year guys in general. And we're always looking for mobility at the quarterback position, too. Drake Maye is coming off a season where he averaged over 4 points per game with his legs. That was a top 8 number in the league when looking at passers with at least 300 dropbacks. And get this. Here's a list of all the rookie quarterbacks who were able to hit 3.5 points per game via rushing and 8 points per game via passing with a minimum of 300 dropbacks since 2011. Cam Newton, Robert Griffin III, Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, Dak Prescott, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert, Drake Maye, Bo Nix, and Jaden Daniels. That's a pretty solid list of quarterbacks. Drake Maye's got a new system. He's got new weapons. He should be able to take a step forward as a passer this year. And if that happens, it's pretty easy to see him finishing as a top 6, top 8 quarterback. Kyren Williams will finish outside the top 18 running backs. This one's bold because on average, he's being drafted as the RB12. He's been a top 10 running back in back-to-back seasons in PPR points per game. And here's why this can happen. Now, I'm not massively low on Kyren Williams this year, mostly because there's sort of a dead zone in drafts around that 3rd round range. Now, I don't think he should be drafted in the early 3rd round, but if he's there in the late 3rd, not a big deal. A lot of that just has to do with the competition around him just getting worse as this summer's gone on. But with that being said, I think Williams' workload is more fragile than most realize. His running back rush share was almost 85% last year. And that was after a season where it was at 78%. That's a really, really high number. Since 2011, we've seen 17 running back seasons where the running back had a running back rush share per game of 80% or better while hitting 300 rush attempts. So they saw a huge percentage of their team's backfield rushes, and they also stayed healthy throughout the season. Now we have next season data on 12 of those 17 runners. And of those 12, only 3 of them saw their running back rush shares increase the following year. And the only one to see an increase of more than 3 percentage points is this outlier named Derrick Henry. The average player from that sample saw a drop of 13 percentage points in running back rush share. I don't think it would be all that shocking if Kyren Williams goes from an 85% running back rush share last year to more like a 70% one this year. They added Jarquez Hunter to the mix, who I thought was a really, really good prospect, and he's had a good summer too. Meanwhile, where's the ceiling coming from a pass catching standpoint? LA, over their last 6 seasons, they've ranked 32nd, 32nd, 31st, 32nd, 30th, and 32nd in running back target share. Maybe that changes this year, but we can't really project that huge of a change, right? And then also on top of all this, you have this Matthew Stafford back issue. Hopefully that doesn't matter. Hopefully Stafford just plays the entire season. But that adds more volatility to Kyren Williams' overall profile. Like I said, I still have Williams ranked as a top 15 running back in fantasy. But it's easy to see these paths where things can go slightly south. And if things go slightly south, he could hypothetically finish outside the top 18. Tucker Kraft will finish as a top 5 tight end. Now, I know that Kraft is a popular late round tight end, but he's still tight end 11 by ADP. That's why this is bold. But I think this could happen. We're not going to see Tucker Kraft have a 9.3 yards after the catch per reception rate like he had last year. Because quite literally since 2011, only one other tight end has done that with at least 50 targets. But that one tight end, George Kittle. Sometimes when there are numbers that are bound to regress, they can still tell us a story. Kraft even getting to that high of a yak per reception is really impressive. Since 2011, the only tight ends who have gotten to a 7.5 yards after the catch per reception with 50 or more targets have been George Kittle, Dallas Goedert, David Njoku, Noah Fant, Vance McDonald, Evan Ingram, Travis Kelce, Rob Gronkowski, and Brent Selleck. That's not a bad list. We need athleticism for our tight ends to give us a big season. And Kraft has that. He showed that last year. And we also want a path for our tight end to be a top 2 target getter on his own team. Now, I like Matthew Golden, I like Jaden Reed, I even like Romeo Doubs. But with the Packers pass catchers, this could go in a lot of different directions. That gives an opportunity for Tucker Kraft to see a lot of volume. And the Packers are definitely a candidate to throw the ball a lot more this year than they did last year. So it makes him a very intriguing late round option, and with tight end being so weak outside the top 3 in my opinion, I think that he could finish as a top 5 option this year. Coleman will outscore Jerry Judy. This one's bold because Jerry Judy is the wide receiver 32 by ADP, Coleman wide receiver 48. Now I think when I look back on this one, it could look really stupid. I mean, a lot of these probably will. I'm probably only going to hit on like 4 or 5 of them. But this one in particular might look kind of dumb because Coleman last season wasn't like a special rookie wide receiver. I think that this season could go in a lot of different directions, but that's also entirely the point. Coleman's yards per out run last year was 1.71, actually not bad for a rookie wide receiver. And that was a hard-earned number. He only ran 36 routes from the slot last year according to PFF. His average depth of target was 15.5. So he was basically just running down the field on the perimeter pretty consistently in that Bills offense. And when you query some historical comps for Coleman, you do get some good names. Courtland Sutton, Mike Evans, George Pickens, those types of wide receivers. Those bigger-bodied perimeter receivers who grew into larger roles as they developed in the NFL. And Coleman, to me, has a chance for that. He was a little raw entering the league, which makes sense because he was 21 years old. But he has the size and he has the ability to bring it all together and make a splash in the NFL. And I think his size, his frame, is where this bold prediction can really work. He led Buffalo in red zone targets last year. Buffalo is a huge regression candidate with how they score their touchdowns. 48% of their scores last year came via the pass. That's a really low number. That number was closer to 65% for them over the last 5 seasons. Meanwhile, on the other side of this prediction, you got Jerry Judy. He's never been much of a touchdown scorer. I mean, the dude had 1,229 yards last year, and he found the end zone just 4 times. Some might say regression, but let's not pretend that Cleveland is projected to be some powerhouse offense. Now, Joe Flacco starting for Cleveland, that's better than the alternatives from a fantasy football perspective. There's no doubt. But we can't assume that he's going to be under center for all 17 games. In fact, I would bet that he's not going to be under center for all 17 games. And while Judy did have some great moments last year, he also ran pretty pure. For instance, during the 5-week stretch where Cedric Tillman was a key player in that offense, Judy averaged a little over 14 PPR points per game. He had a modest 19.6% target share. That's fine from a production standpoint, but the peripherals really weren't that great. His yards per out run last year, his targets per out run, they didn't look all that different from previous seasons. And Jameis Winston played a huge role too. When Judy played without Jameis Winston, he averaged 9.3 PPR points per game. And last season, Cleveland finished with the second highest pass rate in football. No player ran more routes than Jerry Judy in the entire NFL. I just don't think that's going to continue, or at least I don't think we can bank on that. So with so much up in the air in Cleveland, I could see where this season goes south for Jerry Judy. And if Coleman's able to develop, maybe he scores more touchdowns this year in an offense that should have more passing touchdowns, I could see this bold prediction coming true. The 9th bold prediction today is at least 8 quarterbacks will finish with 20 or more points per game. Now, this is in standard scoring, but since 2011, there have only been 3 seasons where 8 or more quarterbacks scored 20 or more standard fantasy points per game. Over the last 3 years, we've been at 4, 4, and 6 quarterbacks hitting that mark. But I think this could happen this year. There's nothing wrong with spending up at quarterback and getting one of the big 4, in my opinion. But outside of those quarterbacks, the position is so deep. I mean, you're getting mid-range quarterback 2s like Jordan Love and Justin Herbert. Even low-end QB 2s like Bryce Young are in pretty good spots. So with the position being as strong as it is, and most importantly, with so many dual-threat quarterbacks out there, it wouldn't shock me at all if we see one of the best quarterback seasons in some time, at least from a fantasy perspective. Now, I don't think that we're going to see like a 2020 season where 10 quarterbacks got to 20 plus points per game, but 8 is definitely within reach, even though we haven't been close to that number since 2021. The last bold prediction today is that both J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey will finish as top 24 running backs. This one's bold because obviously they play for the same team, and J.K. Dobbins, he gets selected at RB 34, R.J. Harvey just inside the top 24. But here's why this could happen. Dating back to 2011, we've averaged 1.7 running back teammate pairings, finishing in the top 24 together in PPR points per game per season. In recent seasons, we've seen that with Detroit, right? David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. In previous seasons, it was the Browns with like Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. You know who else did it? New Orleans, and they did it twice, both times under Sean Payton. Payton's backfields are very attractive for fantasy football purposes. Since at least 2011, his teams have never finished below 6th in running back target share. Even last year, when they had absolute dust at running back, the Broncos still finished 18th, a relatively average ranking in PPR points scored at the position. The team invested in the explosive R.J. Harvey, and then J.K. Dobbins is coming off a solid season. They have a really good offensive line, and they have a really good defense. That could keep them in positive game scripts, and that could keep them focusing on the running back position and giving both Harvey and Dobbins a whole lot of work. So it would not shock me if Denver's one of those teams who has 2 running backs in the top 24 this year in PPR points per game. Just to reiterate, there's going to be 5 more bold predictions that will hit your inbox if you're a Late Round newsletter subscriber. To subscribe, it's absolutely free. Go to lateround.com and just click newsletter. But that's it for today's show. Thanks to all of you for listening. If you get subscribed to the Late Round Fantasy Football Podcast, make sure you are by searching for it pretty much anywhere podcasts can be found. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter and on Blue Sky at Late Round QB. The season finale of Becoming a Best Ball Bro will drop tomorrow, and then later in the week, we've got another mailbag episode. Appreciate you guys listening. I'll talk to you tomorrow.